It's all about value and relationships and where are you adding value?
Yeah.
Because anybody can close a deal, literally.
Yeah.
But it's being consistent, offering a service, understanding your client's needs. And then also, I will say this, knowing when to walk away. Because not every client is for everybody.
Delicia Murugan, thank you so much for coming on the Rebel Agent podcast.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a while, hasn't it? Because we've known each other a couple of years, and we were going to set this up, a year ago or something like that?
It's finally happening. I'm glad.
It's, we've done it. Maybe you can give a bit about your background and then we'll get into...
Sure. Yeah. Well, basically, I've been here in the UAE. It'll be 30 years this year. So moved with my family, and I've been in the tech industry once I graduated from high school and university. I was working with Oracle, Microsoft, and IBM. Those are just a few in the SaaS software world. And then eventually I kind of ran its course. I felt like I did as much as I possibly could, always in sales, a little bit of, I'd say, product management as well. And then eventually I decided to take a change into real estate when I bought property during COVID. That's when it started to really pique my interest. And then, yeah, that's when I met you at the RARA training.
Yeah, that's where we met. So you moved, how old were you when you moved to Dubai?
Oh, I was about 5.
Right, so your family came over from South Africa?
Yes, over from South Africa actually at the time my father was opening up the Microsoft office, which is now an internet city.
So the plan was it was a permanent move?
It was a permanent move. I mean, everybody who moves to Dubai, they don't anticipate it to be permanent, but you get some long timers. I'd say those who are past 10 years. There's quite a few now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're virtually Emirati, aren't you?
Yeah, pretty much, I think. I was able to speak Arabic during high school and whatnot, but...
Well, you have to learn it though,
You have to. It was very enjoyable, but if you don't practice like anything else, you'll forget, unfortunately.
Yeah. But I've heard you speak Spanish, so I know.
I can try. I'm better off understanding French. Speaking is a little harder, but understanding is a little easier. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So let's go back to the, what did you study at uni?
Okay. So initially I was pretty much all rounded, and it was a bit of a struggle. A lot of high school, let's say, graduates in the UAE, often nobody really technically does university here. They go back to their home countries or they go to other countries. And it was a bit of an escape for me. I don't want to be in Dubai anymore. So I went to Canada and I did an undergraduate in business. And it was quite generic, just because I still wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted to get out of that. I've always wanted to be entrepreneurial, so that always kind of lingered in the background. And then, I happened to graduate in the aftermath of the financial crisis. And so trying to get a job or in marketing or finance or anything business related was just not happening. And so I came back to Dubai, and initially, actually, my first job was at Groupon. And that was my introduction to sales. And then there was a huge demand for software in the cloud. And so I interviewed with Oracle, got in, and then that's basically my sales journey, I suppose. Different territories, different products across MENA, so Middle East, Africa. And these were pretty big projects, so they were B2B as opposed to...
So you were a sales account manager?
Yep, sales account manager, and then also they had so many technical terms. If you speak to anyone in software sales, you might feel a little bit like, what are you saying, It's like one of those long titles. But yeah, ultimately sales and also consultation, because it's a very complex sale, and so you have to be quite technical, just on a business level at least.
Yeah, sure. So you have to be technical and you need sales skills, you need people skills, right?
Yeah. I mean, SaaS, basically software as a service.
Which is cloud stuff,
Cloud,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Everybody's familiar with it now, Apple Cloud Storage, Google Cloud. But back then it was more for businesses and a way for them to get their software and their data off of physical hardware, because it costs money, it's a lot of space to rent, and so people were thinking this is better. I used to describe it when I was positioning it to people who didn't understand. It's a bit like renting a house versus buying a house. Both have their benefits and both have their different setups, but one may be more, relevant for you depending on your needs.
Yeah, exactly.
Paying monthly versus paying,
Well, I remember going to, it was actually a property show.
Yeah.
But there were technical guys there, and they were talking about computers. And there was this idea that you could put all your data in what they called the cloud, and it was stored on another server. I thought, this is absolutely mad.
Yeah.
And I walked out.
I know a lot of people had that reaction at this. What? There's like optic wires running under the ocean, and I mean, to physically understand it, the tangible side of it, it's a little bit tricky. But ultimately, it is the best thing to call it is cloud. I think that would probably be the best way to describe it.
Yeah. So you had successful years there. You went on to Microsoft, as you say.
Yeah. So Microsoft, they started to change their whole system as well. They were moving away from doing licenses again to subscriptions to match the cloud model. And Microsoft started to boom. So this is 2016, 17. Satya Nadella took over. And because of that, he sort of revamped what the strategy of Microsoft would be. And it really started to have an impact on how they were positioning their new services. They started to focus a lot on services beyond the scope of software, which, a combination of the software and the service, sort of a full package, was very appealing to new clients as well as older ones. It's a very competitive market, especially in the Middle East. It's also quite saturated. There's a few big players, a few partners, distributors, and then everything is kind of set in stone. Everyone knows exactly how to work, what to do. Unlike, I'd say, maybe the real estate industry, which is still pretty new. Still, things are sort of being figured out.
Yeah, exactly. And it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, there's lots of room for opportunity there.
And I know you worked at Red Hat as well, but how did you feel about the corporate world, particularly towards the end?
Yeah, so each time I moved to a different company, the idea was to have more agency and sort of take on more responsibility and have more contribution. Really add value, not just be a number. But, when you're talking about top Fortune 500 companies, you are a number, you are in corporate. And the biggest challenge was that every time I moved to a smaller company, a bigger one would buy it out. So, with Red Hat, great, this is what we call open source. Technically, it's free software. They were some of the first software I've ever seen, Linux, as you may or may not know.
Yeah.
And then literally 6 months down the line.
It's a language, isn't it?
Correct. It is a software, let's say, system.
Right, okay.
A little bit like Windows, okay? If that's probably easier to understand. And they bought them out within 6 months, and I thought, oh no.
So was it IBM that bought?
It's great for Red Hat, but when that happens, IBM, there's a business model named after them. The top-down business model is named after IBM, 100-year-old company, and so they've got a very corporate structure. And I just felt that what I bring to the table doesn't necessarily fit corporate. And so,
because you do, like you said, you like more agency, don't you?
I like more agency, and I also feel
you like your freedom.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing is being able to use multiple skill sets. I think when you're in a corporate environment, you have to really specialize.
Yeah. Really
focus and be very good at that one thing. Unless you're probably in a more managerial role, looking after people or processes. But it gets to the point where you're not bringing your full self and best self to the position. So nobody's really benefiting the company or you. It took me a while to figure that out. A lot of people who, I say, get into their 30s start to realize that maybe it's not actually about where I work or what my job entails. It's the nature and the structure of the job.
I know a lot of people like that, and quite a few of them stay in it because they need that salary.
Yeah.
But because of your multiple skill sets, you were able to
I hope so. It wasn't easy jumping from, let's say, a steady corporate style income.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing with software sales is you obviously have an income, a basic salary, and then you're quite incentivized, just like any other commission-based industry with commission. However, it's started to change a lot recently. A lot of my ex-colleagues and colleagues are leaving the industry because they literally said to me, you've made the right choice to jump into real estate when you did. Because there's so many, look what's happening with AI. It's going to impact how people do their jobs.
It's going to affect everything, isn't it? But particularly.
Very quickly. I haven't seen such speed. If you think about AI 1 year ago, just 1 year ago, it's not at the level that it is today. And if you think about what it's going to be like in the next 2-3 years, I generally think any industry, if you're not taking that on board, even if you're not just starting with ChatGPT or similar, you will fall behind. For sure, especially when it comes to optimizing processes and automation. you will start to feel it. Your competitors will take advantage of that. I think that's a really big thing.
Okay, so you've had enough of corporate life and you bought your first property.
Yep.
And you thought, well, maybe I could do this as a career. I could become a real estate agent. Is that right?
Yeah, well, it was a very odd time because it was COVID. And, you know, as many people know, the UAE was very strict about its lockdown. And so I was quite lucky because I was in the software industry. I was already working remotely before COVID. So for me, it gave me a little bit more time to explore what else. I was making quite good money. I thought, where can I, you know, invest? My parents had bought MR, you know, Arabian Ranches when it first launched. So this was, you know, long before there was any sort of RERA, in fact. And I thought this is a good time because, you know, the market started to obviously crash and there was a lot of uncertainty about what would it recover. But being here for 30 years, witnessing 2007, witnessing, you know, sometimes the Gulf War, our neighbors and whatnot, the longer you hear, the more you have a faith that it will bounce back.
You realize that it will bounce back.
Yes.
Almost certainly.
Correct. And I feel Dubai government is doing such a good job of understanding market dynamics, macro market dynamics, and adjusting, constantly adjusting to make it work for the UAE and work for the people who live here. So, yeah, I thought, oh, buy a property. I found one.
Where was this?
This was in Studio One in the Marina. I initially just wanted to buy a studio. You know, when your first property, you don't want to go all in. But the prices were the equivalent of what a studio is today for a 2-bed. Okay. So for me, it just made sense.
Oh, so you bought a 2-bed?
I bought a 2-bed with a view. My goal was to Airbnb short-term rent it because at that time, in the, let's say 2019, 2020, Airbnb really started to pick up in the UAE, or short-term rentals overall. And so anything with a view in a touristy area, decent building. This was only 5 years old. In fact, at the time, it was 1 year old. And it just made sense. I thought, oh, this is a great way to, even if I don't live there, I can short term it. And it's got me thinking about the industry.
Yeah, yeah.
And so now, after purchasing the property, I stayed there for a year. COVID ended. And I had left software at this point, and I was uncertain of what I wanted to do now.
Oh, so you jumped from software anyway.
So I just said, I'm not going to jump into another corporate job again, even if it's not software. And I took my time, and this is where I said, it's kind of one of those career breaks where you're like, you can continue on, or you can take a break. It's like a gap year of some sort. Or you can figure out, where do you really want to go? If this is your one chance to be entrepreneurial, now's the time, before you get sort of committed to something more corporate again. So I said, I'm going to go and do some interior design courses, because that was always something in the back of my mind throughout my career, even in my younger years, in my teens. So I did a couple of months with a designer studio. They're really,
so this
really
is
good
during
school.
your gap year?
Yep. And, you know, learned some of the basics about residential and commercial design, SketchUp, AutoCAD. Now you've got AI to help you with all of that. But back then it was very much time consuming. It really opened my eyes. And I just, you know, was moving into the summer. So I was like, I'm ready to list my property for short-term rental. And I was looking at all the different companies, you know, who understands short-term rentals the best. Do they understand seasonality? How do they price? How do they run the operations? I had a lot of questions. I was quite critical about who's going to be operating or managing my property. And so one of the companies I called was Haus. And I called them and I said, the short-term rental team, I said, I'd like to list my property with you. What's the process? How does the contract, how does it work? It was quite a lengthy call. And the sales rep said, look, I'll get back to you. I don't have all the information right now, but I will definitely get back to you. So I got a follow-up call, and it wasn't the same person. It was a different person. And she said to me, oh, I heard that you're looking to work for Haus as a real estate broker. And I said, I think there's some confusion. No, I'd like to list my property with you guys for short term. And she said, well, would you be interested? And
do you reckon she knew really?
I think, I'm not going to name names, but I think definitely there was a sort of playfulness about that, which I kind of admired. I thought that was really gutsy, and I like what they were doing anyways. So it got, I wasn't working, and I thought, if I want to take interior design seriously, and my objective was to finally move into a career that's related to that in some way. And I just thought, yeah, well, interior, real estate, they're quite adjacent if you really think about it, especially in somewhere where aesthetics is a big deal. And so I said, yeah, I took it, and I started in November. And I think we met a couple of months later when we did the RARA.
Yeah, it was about, well, I think we met April, May.
Yes.
So this was 22, November 22, you started roughly. Yeah, and then we met 5 or 6 months later.
It was a huge jump. I mean, a lot of friends, family were saying, how can you go from a really good basic salary or commission to zero or to being very entrepreneurial. But I also, it comes back to this idea that if there's any way to learn how to be entrepreneurial without fully jumping into opening your own business, I think being a real estate broker is a very good lesson.
Exactly, you're partially there, aren't you? So your initial idea was interior designs, and we'll come on to that in a bit, because that's what you're now doing, as well as real estate. But you thought you'd start off with the real estate, and you got the training at House and House. How did it go at House and House?
House was brilliant. I mean, really, really professional, very corporate. And I thought, here we have another corporate again. But still very open. Okay, so I very much enjoyed how structured they were, how professional they were. The training was fantastic. That first immersion week was really, I think it really makes a difference.
Yeah.
And then obviously straight onto the phones, straight onto building your pipeline and viewings and managing and weekly support with your one-on-one with your manager. And so I really enjoyed that. I thought this felt like very, very normal to me. Didn't feel like I'm in a different industry. It felt very much like a Microsoft.
Yeah, you felt at home there.
Yep. But obviously one of the things I did notice is I'm a little bit older than most of the agents at House and House. And there was a lot of new people, first timers, first jobs for a lot of people, but they still did really, really well. I think anyone who took on board the training and really lived what they were being told to do really excelled. I happened to join at a time where, I had to start from the bottom, regardless of my sales experience. I was in rentals in the Marina team, and obviously they kind of separate their teams according to territories, sales and off-plan whatnot.
But you knew the Marina, didn't you?
I did.
So
I
it was
lived
the right
there.
place
So for me, that was a little bit of a comfort, or I could utilize. And I was happy to do that because I wanted to understand the process. And it's a great place. I would recommend, if someone's brand new to real estate, it is always a good idea to start with a few rentals.
Well, I've had rentals, but I've had quite a few guests who've worked at House and House or used to.
Yeah.
And everybody speaks highly of the company.
Yeah.
So.
Eventually, what I realized, let's say I was there for about, 9 months, I suppose. Yeah, just about, maybe just underneath that. I really wanted to move into sales, and House and House has some really good target. The bigger you are, the better you are structured, and hence, you've got quite high targets. I was kind of more interested in the fact that with my tenants and clients that I had built pipeline with, I'd rented quite a few Marina apartments and others. One of the things I started to notice is that, the ones that rented quickly and rented well, high paying and one check, the ones that were designed properly. And I couldn't help but notice that. It's almost like I gravitated towards listing properties that look great, which you shouldn't technically do, but you see it now on social media, the ones where brokers are doing videos and walkthroughs and sort of welcome to my new mansion are the ones that are well designed. They rarely will be empty or poorly designed. And so
there's a lot of competition out there, isn't there, when you're doing the rentals, when you're doing the sales, because although it's a booming market, there's a lot available. Mm-hmm. And if it is designed properly, then
it's also a huge it differentiates between all the others. There's so many properties now that are handing over 25, 26, 27.
Yeah.
They all look the same. So, that's when I thought, okay, I want to do some sales. So I moved to a smaller company, a boutique company, so I could dip into
Kennedy,
yes, yeah. Kennedy Properties. I wanted to try off plan, and they were a little bit more flexible about what you could do because that's the nature of more smaller agencies. So I did a couple of sales, I did a couple of off plans, and it's kind of like if you had to do a course in real estate, how to learn, this is probably what you want to do. You go through almost everything and really understand, get a feel for it. That worked really, really well, and this is when I started to get sort of an itch. And even, at one point I had a brand new property, Vita Marina, just handed over. Nobody was able to rent. Everybody's properties in the same floors were getting, so how are you going to stand out on your listing? Price. And we, investors, they've waited so long for their properties. Why would they want to drop their prices for rent? Brand new.
They don't tend to like to do that.
No, and I agree to an extent if you provide value to your tenant. If everybody else has got the same price and you want to list it for higher or even at market, you got to sort of differentiate. And I suggested to him, do you want to trust me and let's try and do a furnish here within 10 days? And
so you were going to do the interior design.
And then we rented. So, what I had thought in my mind, I so kind of like tested the waters to prove it. And it worked. And I thought, I'm going to come back to this. I sold a few more properties. And eventually I got to the point where I'm like, no, I really want to jump both feet into interior design. And I want to focus on the rental market.
Yeah.
So this is
because
when I
very
left.
much get the impression that that's your passion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can do the sales. And just going back to the sales that you
Sure.
did in real estate, do you think that the background you had with Microsoft and Oracle helped?
Sales, I've said this to, like, I've managed a lot of new salespeople as a manager and then as a mentor. And I say the same thing, whether you're selling lollipops or you're selling software, it's the techniques of selling and the strategy behind it and the psychology behind it. It's the same.
Yeah.
What may differ slightly is who's your audience and what's the process behind that. So software sales takes a lot longer. It involves multiple decision makers. It's B2B as opposed to B2C. But building your pipeline, negotiating, closing, ABC, always be closing, same. And I've had a couple of trainings at House and House, other sales, really big names in the industry, and their sales methodologies. You can literally pick out the same words, the same phrases, the same everything. So yes, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
You really have to understand how to manage yourself and your clients. And I think that's one of the hardest things to do in any sales industry. I think building pipeline, cold calling and marketing and getting your brand out there and then closing. Negotiation is probably one of the tough ones here. I'd say in the Middle East is slightly
But the great
different.
thing is, Delicia, you've got all these skills and you understand them all, don't you?
Yeah.
So, which then took you into Delicia Rental Interiors?
Correct.
So you made the break from Kennedy?
I made the break. It was on good terms. I'm still in touch with Simon. And I decided to jump right in. So all the clientele, all my...
And we're talking, what, September of last year?
Yes, September of last year.
24.
Exactly. The idea was to touch base with all the relationships I had built. So even during my, IT years, it's very much an account-based relationship or a relationship account manager. We rarely call ourselves salespeople because the idea is that you're building a relationship where the client comes to you for multiple needs, not just for one transaction.
Makes sense.
And so I serendipitously, I had people messaging me saying, oh, my apartment's up for renewal. Can you rent it out? And I went, I no longer have a broker card. I've left the industry. But here's what I can do for you. Is your property vacant and unfurnished? I would recommend you furnish it because you can really capitalize on the uplift and get, a better rental revenue out of that. Yeah. And so I convinced the first person and they agreed. And this was probably my first rental at House and House. And it kind of snowballed from there. And every now and again, I'd get clients come to me and say, can you do this for my other property? Or does it work? And, why can't I just put a few appliances? And so there's a lot of business discussion behind it. It's not just, it's about investment. Yeah. And about treating your property.
I've seen quite a bit of your work and it is very high standard. I mean, I would totally recommend, that
Thank you.
Landlords use.
So I always tell people, look, there's a misconception, just like the real estate industry. You've got a lot of people saying luxury this, luxury that, number one this, number one that. And they're always going for the top of the spectrum, which is great. But in reality, if you look at the full market, Majority of everybody's sitting in the middle, and that sometimes gets ignored. And so it's the middle. It's people like you and me who may be investing in property and consider renting it out, or maybe an investor who has multiple studios or one beds and it's just not getting it rented altogether. It's sitting on the market 3 months, 4 months, or it's brand new and competing against all the other ones that are coming on, and now you're dropping price. This is a huge, place where you can do something that is a 10-year minimum of a 10-year investment if it's done correctly. And you reap the rewards, you cover your costs within the month. The UAE is a rare place where you pay your rent in one installment or 2 installments or 4 installments. So the uplift and your ROI, you're going to start to see it faster than, let's say, another place where you're going to have to wait until you get your monthly checks before you can cover that cost. So,
well, all credit to you for spotting that gap in the market and taking advantage, but not just satisfied with one starter. You've gone for another now.
Oh dear! So
you've gone back to the real estate.
Yeah, I've been sort of
talk me through
sucked into that with my business partner. And what happened was, I had done a interior design for his residence in Meydan. He was really happy about that because he wanted 80K unfurnished, and he ended up getting total 120K within 2 days after relisting with the new interior. Yeah. So he really started to see, wow. And he was someone who had 20 properties, a mix of commercial and residential.
So a serious investor.
A serious investor who really understands the market. He's been buying and selling for some time. And he realized that there's so many good properties that are maybe not in the best of conditions, great location, great amenities and surround, everything else ticks the box, but the insides are not great. And he realized with a light flip, I can really get a good tenant and I can get much more. So he said, can you please design this office for me? And I went, ooh, offices require permits. It's a lot more, it's a full fit out as opposed to a light interior design upgrade. There's a lot more involved. I can take it on board. But we will set the lowest expectations on your return. So what I do, even as an interior designer, I never talk about do this design and that's it. We always talk about why we're doing the design, who's our target audience, what type of renter do you want in the space, and what type of ROI do you want out of it? Do you want to invest enough so you can cover your costs from the rent, or do you want to get some profit out of it? And we discuss that. And, this is where I feel that interior designers and real estate agents should be talking more.
Yeah.
Because, and they should be working with each other. Because I feel like with traditional interior designers, they're very focused on the design and the aesthetic and the deliverables. But they have no interest of how that property is used as an asset to generate income. So they're not necessarily thinking about the ROI. They're just thinking, have I done a good job? Was it within budget? That's their objective. And that's fine for what they do. But with my business partner, Dylan, he said, look, I've got an offer for 130. It's totally unfurnished. It's got a few room dividers and areas, but that's it. I said, look, if you really want to go all in, my advice is to full fit out. Office is a representation of your business. It's the first point of visual, for a business. So if you want a tenant who appreciates that, they're going to pay more for it. And within a couple of days of posting the rendering, so not even the final designs on Beirut Property Finder, offers were coming in for 220 and 200. Remember, this was 130 before, wasn't really a real offer, with deposit checks. And I literally had to say, wait, we're still doing snagging and staging, and it'll be ready soon. And so he said, look, let's do this. Let's start a business like that.
Yes, because so that's twice you've done it now. One residential, one office.
Yeah, I've done an Airbnb as well. 5 days. So super speed.
But I mean with Dylan.
Oh, with Dylan, yes, twice.
So he'd seen it and he thought, I want to be her partner and take advantage and set up a real estate agency where you can combine the two.
Ironically, the company or the business who rented out that office space was a real estate agency.
Right, yeah. Well, there's loads here, isn't there?
So, in Business Bay, actually. So the potential to do that. And there's a lot of people coming into the market who've got similar ideas. Again, they're targeting the luxury end of the market. And so that's how we decided to found C&M Properties with Dylan.
Which was this year.
Which was in February of this year.
Yeah. So the other one was September. You're still doing Delicia interior design, Delicia rental interiors.
And I did say to Dylan, I said, look, Dylan, there's thousands of brokerages, okay? And there's the big guys, your Alsops, your House on House, your Bet Homes, amazing at what they do. They are transactional, big numbers, that's why they work so well. And then you get the little guys, the boutique agencies who focus on maybe specific clientele or specific developments. And I said, it's not that I want us to be in the middle. I said, if we're going to do this, we should do it slightly different. And I said, there's a lot of, over the last few years, there's fantastic boom in the industry, but there's also a lot of sort of negative sentiment towards agents sometimes. There's so many of you, and you all say the same thing, and you get this sort of feedback from clients. And I said, the way we can differentiate ourselves really and provide a different sort of value is, I said, we're going to refine the process of real estate. So I said, how we're different from every other boutique agency is that we're going to be very selective of who we work with, and our clients should be as well. And so again, it goes back to this idea of we want relationships as opposed to transactions. So, I've got one broker on the moment, but when I have more... So
you've already got a broker?
We've got a broker on at the moment.
And you're doing
obviously multiple hats type situation. I try to stay out of it because it's one thing to be a broker and there's another thing to be managing brokers. I'm sure you've had a couple of guests and they're slightly different in terms of what's happening there. But I'd said, refining that real estate process from start to finish. So the idea is that, yes, we'll help you to broker your deal, to buy, sell, or rent. But there's so many things that are in between or before. Property management, conveyancing, interior design, just photography, marketing. There's so many elements about the property that if you're a serious investor and you really value your property as an asset that you're going to get an ROI from, you're going to want to manage the whole life cycle of that asset. And that's not just the transaction of selling. So what we're doing is we partner with a lot of different adjacent to the industry real estate companies like conveyancing, like property management or short-term rental. But we are the first point of contact. So the client feels like I've got convenience, which is a really big one. I've got ease of process. I'm not talking to 15 different people and trying to manage that. I'm not taking up too much of my time. And we're talking about business first and foremost. So how do we get you an ROI? If you don't get one, we don't get one. So the idea behind this is we want our clients to do well, have a relationship with them, and then have a portfolio of clients where we can service them across different services, but we don't have to be the specialist in it. We work with people who we trust and know. Yeah,
but the great thing is, because you understand all these different areas, you know which partners to pull in, don't you?
Correct.
You have to have a little bit of knowledge of a lot of things.
Master of non-jack of all trades type situation. I mean, generally speaking, investors have that mindset. They rarely have their fingers in just one pie. They're probably in crypto, or they're probably in, stocks, bonds, other gold, commodities. So I like investor clients because they understand ROI, and they're looking for, ways to capitalize on that. And so when they come to me and they say, why is my property not renting? Or should I sell it? Or should I flip it? We come at it with a business perspective first, not go and buy this developer and don't buy that property and this is the stock I have, please consider. So it's more of a consultation advice.
Yeah, you're finding your niche, aren't you, in that?
I think people who are investors, I own property, Dylan owns quite a few. We put ourselves in their shoes and think, who are you more likely to work with? Someone who understands business, or someone who's just pushing their agenda to close deals for the sake of closing deals.
Yeah.
So I even encourage brokers to think that way. So, yes, you've got targets. Yes, you're there to make money for yourself at the end of the day. It is a business for yourself. But you've got to add value. And again, it's all about value.
Yeah, and relationships.
And relationships. And where are you adding value? Yeah. Because anybody can close a deal, literally.
Yeah.
But it's being consistent, offering a service, understanding your client's needs, And then also, I will say this, knowing when to walk away, because not every client is for everybody. And there's a lot of, in this market, there's a lot of optimism and excitement, which is great. But I think a good thing is also to understand when to walk away. It's a little bit like.
But do you
playing
find
poker.
when you do walk away, they want you even more then?
It gives us a nature of exclusivity, elusivity. Yeah, I suppose there are some, mind games there, some strategies.
Yeah.
But it also shows that you understand your worth and that you know what you're bringing to the table. You understand, and again, you've got to have some experience behind you, or you've got to have a really good way of working with people if you don't have that experience at least. And back up what you say. So I don't advise people to do things I wouldn't do. And I have literally stopped deals because I know that 5-6 months down the line, this person's going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, and that's going to come back to you in the end, isn't it? And people will respect you for giving you that advice and come back to you.
I mean, as many brokers as they are, I always say that it is a small world. So, it's forever expanding, but everybody knows everything in this market. It's very, very like...
So going back to C&M Properties, where are you at the moment with the startup?
That's a good question. So we did, all the usual stuff, set up with RERA, did the training again, actually, which was really pleasant.
Because you needed a different license. Is it license for an agency?
Yes, that's right. So obviously a brokerage versus a broker card. But also I wanted to get the perspective of what's changed in 2 years. It's almost like a refresher, but a lot, actually. A lot in the world of RERA. And it was a really good way to introduce my broker to let's see how things would work, not just from a technical and professional way, but just to meet other brokers and talk to other people who are also starting like you.
Oh, so the two of you did the course?
We did.
Yeah.
Dylan was there in and out. Obviously, he's got a lot on his plate. So
he's more of a silent partner, is he?
Well, I wouldn't call him silent, that's for sure. No, he's really got the hands-on experience. When it comes to technical and say very specific things with relation to RERA, I'm sort of the person to back that up. But we balance each other nicely. Where we're at the moment with the company is we've got a few listings online. We want to hire at least 5 to 6 brokers. But right now I am designing the office space. Yeah. So once again, I've got one foot in the managing director role and then the, lead interior designer. So literally breaking concrete at the moment.
You have to get all your ducks in a row, don't you? It's one thing at a time.
I'm generally a person who will say, as a broker, you've got the freedom. You should have the freedom to move around, do viewings, be in the office, not be in the office. But it is important to be a couple of hours. And I think having a good work environment, workspace, makes a huge, huge difference to brokers. Like they feel like they want to work, they'll hear other people, they get motivated. I think that's one of the reasons why we really want to do a good job with our office, fit it out well. And, it's kind of like if you build it, they will come. I don't know if you remember that.
Well, I've seen what you've done so far and it will be good. And that's in Motor City. It
is in Motor City. There's a lot of new brokerages in Motor City. White & Co. Big guys, also our neighbors. And it's becoming very popular. Even more so, I'd say a couple of business bayers are heading over to Motor City as well.
Yeah, well, we're in Business Bay at the moment doing this podcast, aren't we? It's a bit chaotic traffic-wise and all the rest of it. So, you're either going to be here, Motor City, Marina. It's, But just before we wrap up,
sure.
Going back to your interior business, you're keeping that separate, aren't you? And you're still doing that, is that right? So
what we want to do is, generally speaking, what I've said is, look, almost every property has the potential to have an uplift. And that's not the same as an upgrade. So an uplift means you're actually getting ROI out of your upgrade. And we have guaranteed results. So the difference between me and, say, another fast finishing company or a bespoke interior design studio is that we're going to guarantee you that you're going to rent out at market or higher. Because we are taking on board the project.
What, you put that in writing? Or?
Generally speaking, yes. What we do is we say, because if I have control over listing it with C&M Properties, now I can say that. Because, it is the case. If you market correctly, Matterport 3D video tours, feature and hot on Property Finder and Bayut, and obviously the broker, who's brokering the deal makes a huge difference. So again, I will refer to not just brokers in my company, but brokers in other companies who do a good job and understand the market. You tick all these boxes, you're gonna get your property rented at market or higher. And it's been the case on, let's say, I'll just pick the last 7 properties that I have done rental flips for, interior flips for, always the case. So what we're trying to encourage is investors and landlords, rental landlords especially, to recognize that we're going to offer you a full service, right? You don't have to take it.
Shop.
One-stop shop. You don't have to take it, but the chances of you achieving your goal, renting out your property altogether or renting out higher. My last project was, my property's been on the market with said brokerage for 4 months at 90K, and it's not rented. And it's at market price. So there's really no reason why it shouldn't be renting. And then I had a look and I said, okay, it's decently furnished, but there's nothing here that shows enticing for a high paying tenant to say, yes, I'm going to commit and I'm going to do 1 check. So literally, we have to think about it that way. How many days in the market are you sitting vacant? How many days of rent is that? If you take 90,000 dirhams and divide it by 365 days, you're going to start to understand how much you're potentially losing out. And then within 5 days, your new property is designed with Delicia Rental Interiors, listed with C&M Properties, new marketing, new photography, brokers on it, 5 offers. We got ranging between 90 and 98K, okay? And at least 3 of them are 1 checks. So what's the difference between before and after? A few things. Number 1, good marketing, obviously, but not before you do a reasonable, cost-effective interior flip. So rule of thumb is you should be investing about 10% of the market rent for your comparable units, in the same building, same layout, same floor space. Because 10% is also what tenants value. That's why they give you a 10% deposit for furnished spaces. So it shows you that, yes, you can customize, have a great design, and then really get it rented.
Yeah, and that will last for years, won't it?
Well, the way we design it, yes, because I'm really particular about what we put in there and why we put it.
Yeah, you'd already mentioned
staging,
that, yeah.
furniture arrangement, size, materials. It's meant to last, and it's meant to look timeless. So it's not a design that's fashionable, which, first 3 years is great and then it's out of fashion. No, we're trying to keep something that people will keep, exciting enough for you to see it and want to be there, but not too busy and bold so that you feel like, I can't live in this space for too long. It's a very fine balance.
Yeah.
Design in general is about balance, though. That's the whole point.
I mean, it makes perfect sense to me why investors would come to you and use you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is incredible. You've got all these skill sets, and you're making best use of them now. So.
I mean, the biggest one I have from people, the pain points, let's say the challenges from clients is, why is it not renting? Why can't I sell my property? And I can see they're generally baffled because they've done everything right. So just think about it. You've done all the hard work. You've bought this property. You've paid 2% to your broker or something around that. You've set it up. You've connected your DIWA. You've all this hard work, and then they get to the finish line and they go, oh, let me just throw a whole random bunch of furniture in there and hope that it rents. And I find like it's kind of like tripping up before the finish line. And a lot of people don't think about it that way. And I always explain to them, look, if you...
Such an important part.
Yeah, people love their cars in Dubai, right? Love their luxury cars and stuff. And I explain to them, look, if you foil your car with leopard print and you've got sheepskin in the front and you've got dents all over the car and then you want to sell it or rent it, and this is when it clicks a lot for people. They're like, oh, especially a lot of men, and they go, oh. and it's kind of like that. You've got to look at your property as an asset, even if that's not your intention. So even if it's for personal use, how many people have said, my property is just my forever home, or it's, Dubai's not a forever place all the time. So a lot of people have said, I'm going to move into another area, rent out my space.
Yeah, you keep your options open, don't you? By using your services.
So there you go. Yeah.
No, very good. I give you massive credit for what you've achieved so far.
Thank you.
You'll have to come back on and give me an update maybe in 12 months' time.
Yeah, some visuals. Yeah. Design is very visual.
Where's the best place for people to connect with you?
Right now, I would say probably on Instagram. I have Delicia Rental Interiors as my handle.
Yeah.
And eventually...
And you've got examples of your work there, haven't you, which is very good.
We're in the process of setting up our website for C&M as well as Delicia Rental Interiors. But obviously, Instagram socials are the easiest place to connect, as I'm sure you're familiar with. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.